I can't believe how I simply asked some questions and the way you're attacked for simply asking questions. Has our country really become that you're not even allowed to publicly question the government?
Beck, 9/11 Truth. Beck has issues with 9/11 Truth.
If you don't know what a 9/11 truther is, let me quickly tell you about them. Those people who would like to destroy us are enemies like Al-Qaeda. They'd like to destroy us, and they will work with anyone. There are also people like white supremacists or 9/11 truthers that would also like to destroy the country. They'll work with anybody they can. We need to look out for enemies, foreign and domestic. Mike, let me go to you. One of the guys, or one of the groups that I've been warning about for a very long time are these 9/11 truthers. These are people that are whacked out conspiracy. The government has planned 9/11.
Yeah, unfortunately, crazy hate doesn't know any bounds. Whether they serve somehow in these psychopaths' minds to fuel each other's actions. The problem with the 9/11 truthers, people are horrified when they see the reports after 9/11.
Beck, in response to your continuing derogatory attacks on 9/11 Truth, we demand you address the following points before proceeding to act as a segregationist. Jesse Ventura has questions about 9/11.
How come we're not allowed to ask any questions today?
Fact. World Trade Center Building 7 was not hit by an airplane. However, Building 7 fell at nearly free fall speed, against the path of most resistance, into its own footprint. Here is video of World Trade Center Building 7, as it collapsed on September 11th, 2001.
7 World Trade Center was a 47-story office building. Number 7 was never hit by a plane, but it collapsed the same way as the ones that were.
It just went ba-boom, it was like a bomb went off. It just went ba-boom.
Fact. Firefighters and first responders are documented on video stating there were bombs blowing up in the World Trade Center buildings. Beck, watch the following video testimonies of eyewitnesses stating there were multiple explosions in the buildings, and bombs were also discovered inside the World Trade Centers.
Yeah, here's one of the guys who can tell you I'm okay, all right? Here, hold on. You want to call your mother or something?
You gotta get back from here.
We've heard reports of secondary explosions after the aircraft impacted, whether in fact there wasn't something else at the base of the towers that in fact were the coup de grace to bring them to the ground.
When you're down there, Dan, you hear smaller secondary explosions going off every 15 or 20 minutes.
And every few minutes you'll hear like a small sort of a rumbling sound, almost like an explosion sound.
Of where the explosion was. That area has just been evacuated because police have found what they describe as a suspicious device, and they fear that it might be something that could lead to another explosion. I spoke with some police officials moments ago, Chris, and they told me that they have reason to believe that one of the explosions at the World Trade Center may have been caused by a van that was parked in the building that may have had some type of explosive device in it. So their fear is that there may have been explosive device planted either in the building or in the adjacent area.
We heard another explosion, and I'm assuming that's the one that came from the lower level, since there were two. And I
right, because it was like 18 minutes apart.
Well, this is the first explosion, and there was a second explosion in the same building. There were 2 explosions.
Okay.
Federal agencies that were down there do believe that there was some sort of explosive device somewhere else besides the planes hitting. Chief Albert Turry, he received word of the possibility of a secondary device, that is another bomb going off. He tried to get his men out as quickly as he could, but he said that there was another explosion which took place, and then an hour after the first hit here, with the first crash that took place, he said, there was another explosion that took place in one of the towers here. He thinks that there were actually devices that were planted in the building. The second device, he speculates, was probably planted in the building.
First one and then the other. Some say after secondary explosions.
We understand now there has been a secondary explosion on Tower 2.
If you wish to bring anybody who's ever watched a building being demolished on purpose knows that if you're going to do this, you have to get at the under infrastructure of a building and bring it down.
Sorry, you said there's a bomb? What'd you say? A bomb in the building. Start clearing out. Got it.
There was another big explosion in the other tower. Flames coming out in this billowing grey smoke. had that big explosion from much, much lower. I don't know what on earth caused that.
At 10:30, I tried to leave the building, but as soon as I got outside, I heard a second explosion and another rumble and more smoke and more dust.
As we were getting our gear on and making our way to the stairway, there was a heavy-duty explosion.
Some of the people out, then there was secondary explosions and then subsequent collapse.
We really never even got that close to the building. An explosion blew and it knocked everybody over.
They were taking photographs and securing this area just prior to that huge explosion that we all heard and felt.
Like, it sounded like gunfire. You know, bang, 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 bang. And then all of a sudden, 3 big explosions.
To me, it sounded like an explosion, then the building, the rolling sound sounded like the building collapsed.
It just went ba-boom, it was like a bomb went off. And another explosion came right from it.
We saw some kind of explosion, a lot of smoke come out at the top of the tower, and then it collapsed down onto the 8th floor.
Big explosion.
We heard a very loud blast, explosion.
We heard a big explosion coming down. It was a big explosion and everything got dark.
Down in the basement, all of a sudden we heard a loud bang.
Cars on fire, cars just turned by the force of the explosion.
I heard explosions.
You started floor by floor, started popping out.
It was like, if it had detonated.
Yeah, detonated.
Yeah. Take down a building.
As I'm walking by the main freight car of the building, in the corridor, that's when I got blown. I mean, the impact of the explosion, of whatever happened, it threw me to the floor.
Glenn Beck noticed the classic crim as the building is brought down by a controlled demolition.
That's when I got blown. That's when I got blown.
Fact. Dust samples from Ground Zero have been tested, and the chemical signature of superthermite has been discovered. Glenn Beck, here is a peer-reviewed study which has proven thermitic material has been discovered in dust samples taken from the World Trade Center site. Nanothermite, also called superthermite, is the common name for a subset of metastable intermolecular composites characterized by a highly exothermic reaction after ignition. Nanothermites contain an oxidizer and a reducing agent, which are intimately mixed on a nanometer scale. Glenn Beck, watch the following video of just a tiny amount of superthermite, painted on the steel, melt right through the beam.
There's a residue of explosive in this World Trade Center dust.
The presence of explosive residue was never mentioned in the official report. The residue is a substance called superthermite.
It's a liquid when it's wet, and it can actually be painted on. I mean, these guys might actually have thought they were just painting. When you're painting with it, it's safe. When it dries, it's a high explosive.
I understand you have some questions about superthermite. Well, let's do an experiment. The first step in the experiment is to make the liquid superthermite. We mix it in with the paint, and then we have our superthermite liquid paint. Now let's paint the superthermite onto the metal beam, subject it to a fire, see what happens. Fire! As we expected, the beam with the thermite is burning much brighter. It's a much hotter fire than we had before. So the temperature is going to rise in this beam more than it would in the beam without the thermite. Does it burn long enough and hot enough so that we have structural failure?
Fact. More than 1,000 architects and engineers have signed a petition demanding a new, independent investigation into 9/11.
We've just achieved a milestone of 1,000 architects and engineers that have signed our petition calling for a new investigation. New evidence that has come from an international team of investigators includes nanothermite material, which is basically made only by military industry, has been found in dust samples taken throughout the World Trade Center site.
Glenn Beck, will you address the architects and engineers who have signed the petition for a new investigation into 9/11? Watch the following video.
Now, a different kind of engineering question. 1,000 engineers and architects from 47 different cities today called for a new independent investigation into 9/11 this morning. It happened at news conferences that were held in 47 cities across North America, including one here in Victoria. The group is Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, founded by an architect from San Francisco. The group says it has new evidence suggesting that explosives, not planes, alone brought down the 2 World Trade Center towers and a third 47-story skyscraper on that fateful day, September 2001. The group says it has explosive forensic evidence that was omitted from the official reports on the attack. Representatives of the group based in Victoria, who have signed a petition demanding a new investigation, say the fire alone could not have brought down the buildings, particularly World Trade Center Tower number 7.
That can only happen if you remove all the core columns at the right moment in a controlled demolition fashion, as we've seen on TV.
The group says, given that the buildings were in partial or full freefall during the destruction, it suggests or points directly to expertly placed explosives. It also points to reports that first responders saw flashes and heard bangs at the onset of the destruction, and that the explosive ejections of building material can be seen 20 to 40 stories below the collapsing portion of the World Trade Center towers.
Glenn Beck is Jesse Ventura Cook for asking some questions. Is he dangerous? Is he a national security threat because he demands some truth? Glenn Beck, are you a segregationist?
That you're not even allowed to publicly question the government?